out of the cooking jar too long.
Greetings, good people, and welcome back to the channel. I've got a question for you. Do you remember the first time you heard Captain Ibrahim Traore talk about African sovereignty? Do you remember? And if you don't know Captain Ibrahim Traore, that is the president of Burkina Faso, that little country somewhere in West Africa. A 34-year-old geologist turned soldier is rewriting Africa's future, and the Imperial West is absolutely terrified.
Our path is a point of no return. We want to break our chains and be independent. The chains we are breaking, it's forever. Everything that is a bond, that keeps us in slavery, we will break those bonds.
And what is your message to Emmanuel Macron?
If something happens to Ibrahim Traore, you're gonna see what's gonna happen in the Western countries.
Emmanuel Macron, leave our beloved president alone. Leave him alone. We don't need you. We don't need you.
I, Michael Elliott Langley,
do solemnly swear
that
I will support and defend
the
Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
So help me God.
Congratulations, General.
Thank you, sir.
I don't know any American, and I don't know every American, but I don't know any American that even knows who General Michael Langley is. I actually just found out who he was 2 days ago. But when you see black people being put in a position like that, and then turn on their heels to criticize another leader in another country, that is by design. And they do not speak for us. They are ruining the reputation of African Americans globally, making people think that we feel this way. We have our own problems in America.
One of the first statements Captain Ibrahim Traore made when he got to office: our gold belongs to us, belongs to our people. It's a very simple statement, but it carries a lot of weight. He went ahead to kick out French troops from Burkina Faso. So today, like you have heard lately, there's a man who's in charge of America's Africa, General Langley.
I, Michael.
And so if you listen to the rhetoric of Imperial West, fronted by this general, then really you get to realize that the difference between that rhetoric and reality on the continent of Africa is like day and night. But they would want the world to believe that this gentleman, Captain Ibrahim Traore, is nothing but a gold thieving captain who's ripping off Burkinabes.
Captain Traore and Burkina Faso, as they know that both, whether it's their gold reserves, that is all those proceeds are just in exchange to protect the junta regime.
But the question is this: whose business is it? Why are you policing independent nations that need to run their own business? America runs its own affairs. Nobody questions it.
Let's have trial by combat.
Burkina Faso is doing exactly that. So I've got to pose another question to you. When the future generation looks back to this moment, will you be on the right side of history, considering what is happening in Burkina Faso now and the threats coming from Imperial West?
18 times there had been attempts to kill him by snipers, poison, explosives, even undercover agents. All had failed.
Emmanuel Macron, leave our beloved president alone. Leave him alone.
In reality, what we are witnessing now happening in Burkina Faso is something extraordinary. It's never happened before. And it's being led by a fairly young man, just in his mid-30s, Captain Ibrahim Traore. And let's be honest, man, the reason there's a lot of noise from the West, the reason they're painting this narrative around Captain Ibrahim Traore is just for one factor: resources. That is what all the noise from the Western capitals is about. Remember, France, for example, for decades powers its nuclear plants, which supplies electricity to France using uranium from one Sahel country, Niger. They have also been mining gold, and that seems to be the trend, that Africa has been reduced to this basket of extraction And Captain Ibrahim Traore represents a departure from that. So, are you reading between the lines? That's the business that is going on. That's the noise, the loud noise we're hearing.
That is all. All those proceeds are just in exchange to protect the junta regime.
What we all have to realize and actually accept is that the world is changing, and it has changed a lot. From a unipolar system to a multipolar system, China becoming a disruptive force, both militarily as well as in terms of global business. So, in truth, therefore, the change of the world to a multipolar system is not just a mere headline, it's a reality. And it is an unsettling factor for many Western capitals that for the longest time have been in charge, have been the power, who have tended to load it over other nation states.
America first! America first!
But the change is happening, and the way it's happening, it cannot be stopped. You will remember that Britain, for example, was a world ruler for close to 2 centuries. Britain was the power. But come the Second World War, they were vanquished. That small nation that had become so powerful eventually was vanquished. And America rose because of its nuclear power and the bombing in Japan. They ended up stamping the authority as the new sheriff in town.
Mr. Churchill makes his appearance for the first of the meeting.
Now, multipolarism is here. It cannot be denied. So when somebody thought they were totally in charge, well, there's somebody else who's creeping into that space. So though we hear that Burkina Faso have been unable to fend off terrorism in their country, in the Sahel region, the reality is Western powers have been in that country for ages. Certainly the French troops, under the guise of fighting terrorism. But you and I know it's not just terrorism. This terror fight is a cover for other things. It is clearly masking a far much deeper agenda. Because if you have been kicked out, which essentially means that your military budget will no longer have to be spent on this country, why is it so painful that you're saving some money? Then it just means there must have been something that you're reaping, that you're gaining under the guise of fighting terrorism.
Whether it's their gold reserves, all those proceeds are just in exchange to protect the junta regime.
So to that extent, when you listen to General Langley talk about Burkina Faso gold, referring to the junta regime as one that is exploiting its people, it's laughable because it is their business. It is their gold. It is their sovereign state. It is their wealth to do with as they please. Why should it matter to America? That is a bigger question. So that Captain Traore is so threatened that traveling is an issue, and he talks about it openly. It is a fear that has gripped that nation, and it is not coming out of a vacuum.
Mr. President, aren't you afraid for yourself today?
Afraid?
We lived through the period of Thomas Sankara. We know how that ended.
Yes, you are right. And it's the question everyone asks. And it's actually the phobia of the Burkinabe people. When they think about it, they are always afraid for me.
And Thomas Sankara, his own buddy, bosom buddy, Blaise Compaoré, was used to take him out. And what is the French were involved? The imperial powers were involved in the assassination of Thomas Sankara. What Captain Traore seems to embody today is a Thomas Sankara, a more re-energized Thomas Sankara, who is pushing for development in that nation. Granted that the military might not really be the best solution for most of the African countries, anywhere else really in the world, because civilian rule should really be the standard. But if this is where the journey begins, and if this is the opportunity for an African nation to then say, Imperial West get off our backs, if it is only the military who can muscle the energy, the power to speak that truth, then so be it. Africa has been saddled with leaders who have been nothing but puppets of the Western regimes. Certainly, we are still seeing it in many countries, such as Kenya. We saw recently how young men and women were cut down along Parliament Road. A documentary was produced and they're raising a lot of hell, as if it was manufactured, as if it was AI. Yet, citizen journalism was very much alive on the streets of Nairobi. That information eventually came out, capturing the desires of a younger generation today who believe they have been robbed by those who are in power, doing the bidding for Western powers and certainly for themselves.
Of the President of the Republic of Kenya and Her Excellency Rachel Ruto.
Over the decades, what has happened is that Western media have tended to pander more to the same center-west, glossing over the contradictions that exist in the West. Look at what the US did in Iraq over a fictitious weapons of mass destruction charge against Saddam Hussein. They ended up deposing Saddam Hussein. Iraq has never been the same, and many, many lives were lost in that country. The gentleman who was in charge of Britain presenting that whole fake nuclear document, Dr. Kelly, ended up committing suicide in the UK. Also, we are told, we don't know the truth about that. This was way back in 2004. So these are the contradictions you see in the West. The same West, as the documents tell us, engineered the deposition of Muammar Gaddafi.
We were the ones that caused Gaddafi's death because Hillary Clinton played a game over there, and I was the one that went over there during the war. Gaddafi asked me to come over. I took a Biden staffer and a Bush staffer and a film crew leader from ABC One in New York, Larry Menti, with me, and a cameraman, because I didn't want the CIA to set me up. I hand-carried the letter back from Gaddafi offering to resign.
So, while the Western media carries on painting African leaders as dictators, certainly in the case of Captain Ibrahim Traore, they have tended to gloss over what the Western capitals are doing, referring to Africa as a land of dictators, but embracing dictators in their own quests to achieve agendas on the continent of Africa. Good case in point, Mobutu in Congo DRC, or Zaire at the time. This is the man who was used by the Western powers to take out Congo's first Prime Minister, Patrice Lumumba. That is a man that successive regimes in Capitol Hill, from Bush to Reagan to Lyndon B. Johnson, John F. Kennedy, all of them worked with Mobutu.
President Mobutu and I have had the opportunity to review and renew one of our oldest and most solid friendships in Africa.
In the end, Mobutu left behind a destroyed nation, yet one of Africa's richest, one of the world's richest. This is the paradox that we have been living all this time, and our young leaders face it daily in their struggle against all these new colonial powers. Ibrahim Traore now is the symbol of that struggle, and it is for that reason that a lot of black diaspora and Africans across the world can't connect with this brother, because he stands for something, a yearning that they have had.
And we are sending a message to America. Enough is enough.
For a strong leader who can speak up, a David who can speak up to Goliath.
There's a point of no return. We want to break our chains and be independent.
So young African leaders are actually saying we are changing the script. The way Africa has worked in the West is not working for us. But now we are seeing that our young leaders are walking that talk. The solutions that we are executing on the continent are essentially based on our own unique situation, our own unique experiences. And it is bound to take Africa in a certain direction. That is what we must think about. Helping create frameworks for self-determination, frameworks that go beyond a single leader. Because leaders come and go, But institutions remain, nation states remain. The population keeps replenishing. We have got to leave something that can sustain them to the hundreds, if not thousands of years to come. That is what African youth are doing today. That is the challenge, the task that they have, that in the moment when they were called, they stepped up to the plate. And Burkina Faso is a good example. And the whole point is, which really is the reason Africans are rallying around this brother, is that Africans are shedding off that colonial tag, kicking out the French from the Sahel region, not delivering any goods. You'll remember that France has continued to control the Sahel region using this colonial relic, the CFA franc, which is tied to the Sahel economies. How will these nations ever retrieve what has been stolen from them? So to every African who's watching this, whether you're in the black diaspora, from the continent, wherever you are, this is your moment. This is our moment. And it has taken a young man in Burkina Faso to make it happen. I don't remember any other time in history that a single individual has galvanized the African population across the world as this brother has.
This is a message to France.
Yes.
This is a message to America. This is a message to all the...
He has infused something that goes beyond him as the man. Because whatever happens to Captain Traore today, the march is on. There is a black awakening. There's an African awakening that has triggered this transformation that has been long overdue. So it cannot be stopped. Imperial West cannot. Certainly China had been ridiculed for the longest time in the 60s and 70s. And in the late 70s, China began to open itself up to the world, visiting America, courting the Western world, encouraging investment, trade and business in the country. That China that was backward in the 60s pulled itself out of that poverty, and today is the global leader when it comes to business. Its military might is yet to be tested, but it cannot be ignored because the signs are there. So Africans, wherever you are, step up, man. Will you be part of Africa rising? Will you be part of that change? The future belongs to those who are daring, man. I must say that. And Captain Traore is a daring man. General Langley has got America behind him, and he is seen honestly to the African population as a traitor. He said recently during an interview that he sticks by his words. He visited Kenya just the other day.
So you stand by that statement? Because there's been pressure on you to walk those statements back.
That's my statement. That's my assessment.
But Africa is also saying, this is our moment. So will you join us in creating this new chapter, writing this new story about the continent? And if you really believe that, then share the love, show some support. And I hope it's made sense to you. So please do share, like, do subscribe, and check out the coming story. This is definitely Afrocentric. We are all about celebrating the continent, motherland, Africa, African diaspora, and I am definitely out.